Ready, welcome to the September 28th regular update for WSO, where I'm going to show a couple subscriber pictures and go through a little bit of information that I found on the internet about that could relate to the system, to a separate solar system coming into ours. So here's the first thing. The stratospheric radiation has been increasing since March 2015. I think a lot of people have said they've been feeling the sun being a little hotter. Now, the qualifier here is that it was basically measured in an eastern part of California, which we know is very dry and kind of an arid place. And each part of the globe probably would have a different measurement, but it is a strong indicator that another indicator. We would look for radiation increases, X-ray increases, things that might be spinning off of a foreign star, a black or brown or red dwarf star. This next picture that I've got for you, though, is from Hawaii, and we're seeing that huge red halo again and the odd stuff around the sun, which a lot of this is lens flares, granted, but sometimes lens flares tell the story too, because they're a reflection or a refraction of light that exists. So you can't have a refraction unless a photon hits. So I look at all this stuff, but this is something you can see with your naked eye. I mean, that big red halo. Here's a photo that somebody sent in and put a little words in there so we could see what they saw, but just thought he saw a comet. And we've been having a lot of reports around sunset in Kansas, Midwest United States, and I actually saw it again tonight too. A very bright object that is hard to make out, but it has a little bit of a trail, looks like, behind it. See if you can see it, and if you do, please send me the photograph, and I'll see if you can put it on the channel. Now, here's a phenomenon that we're seeing in Belgium and the UK right now. A light has been crossing the sky. So here's the kind of the raw footage of it. But then what I did was I just manipulated it a little bit so we could maybe perhaps see better what we might be looking at up there. And what's disturbing about it, as you come into it, it's got that strange little cutout on it, similar to what we saw on the orb that we caught yesterday. See that little pock mark? And again, this is still just blowing my mind. I'm not going to get off this one. This is the clearest. I mean, come on, man. And then I got several confirmation shots where people were picking this up all over the Midwest United States. The same time I picked up a picture of it, the same time this person got a very, very good refraction. And what I'm theorizing here is that they just found a good focal point. I'm not sure it tells us anything else other than, wow, there it is, right? So anyway, that's the object or whatever this light that's moving across the sky in England, Belgium, and those areas. Here's an interesting photograph from 60,000 feet. Don't ask me how we got to 60,000 feet, but here you can see the chemtrails are actually below the whatever the device they're using to do this. And then they manipulated the image a little bit, and they did actually make out some objects from a higher altitude where it's less obfuscated by atmosphere and other particulate, and and guys, this is this is very compelling stuff. Now, yeah, Terrell Blackstar was on here, and he and I disagree a lot about a lot of stuff. I say there can't be, you can't expect there to be a star dead or not, or dying or not, without its own with its own planets. That's just ridiculous. We think that almost every star in the in the known universe has a planet next to it, according to Kuiper, it seems like, right? So, yeah, there's that. And here are some of these confirming photos where other people were catching, again, glimpses of the same thing on that night. Okay. All right, good. All right, so let's take a real quick look at near Earth approaches. And this is also very interesting because we had a real close popper again today. And again, we would expect to see material coming towards us as this dark star approaches. I would think it's going to drag material with it. So here we are looking at things that we just learned in 2016, because remember, this 2016 indicates the year that it was discovered. And then we have very, very short distances on a couple. So we have a lot of kind of close calls. One of the things that I liked about what Terrell said, though, was it is a lot of distance between a lot of these objects. I mean, space is huge. And so when we have these kinds of multiple close approaches, it's pretty unusual. I mean, it really is, because usually these objects do not come in such groupings, okay? So here's where you should turn off. Now, so I keep talking about the danger that exists in all the things like that, and I'm not going to leave you without comfort. So if you don't want to listen to comforting words from my spiritual perspective, this would be a good time for you to turn off the video. Okay, great. So you stayed with me. And maybe you want to know, maybe you want to learn something. Maybe there's a thirst that you have that you need to know more about this stuff, okay? Now, the first thing is Jesus Christ, okay? The word Jesus Christ. All right, whatever. Everybody wants to get all caught up in semantics. Jesus Christ was Yeshua HaMashiach in Hebrew and Jesus, I think, in the Aramaic or whatever. I call him Jesus Christ. He answers to it. We're good on it, okay? So, the first thing I need to put out there is the deity of Jesus Christ. If you don't understand how a true Christian or a mystic Christian like me comes at this, you'll never understand where I'm coming from in terms of forgiveness, grace, gracefulness, love, the way I act, the way I treat my guests, the way I'm trying to grow, right? So you have to understand this before you can really understand where I'm coming from. So if you don't understand that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, notice that we use the word, okay? Word is a speaking, a vibration. I want you to know that string theory is moving along quite well, thank you, and that would indicate that the whole universe were the words or the vibrations of God himself, okay? In the beginning, this being, this entity, this essence was with God, and all things came into being through him. So in other words, this was basically one and almost one with God, 100% God, okay? And in him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Who can relate to this, that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not comprehend it? That was my Jack Black, impression. And then the Word became flesh. This is where we believe that Jesus became, or what God really did was he became a human being and dwelt among us. Now, we're not the only religion that believes God or gods come and dwell among us. What makes our position different in Christianity from the positions of maybe some other religions is the fact that we believe that this is the Most High God Creator that became flesh. So there's something really special about the human race. I don't mean necessarily anything special amongst us. We're all equals. God is no respecter of persons. But let me tell you something, man. The Word became flesh. We call that person Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, whatever you want to call him, right? He dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, the glory of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. And then it goes on to talk about how there's the last prophet John, the prophet John, actually was his cousin and was the last prophet and the greatest prophet according to Jesus. Anyway, so what has this all got to do with the gospel? Well, let me tell you something, guys. So if you don't understand that everything that Jesus Christ did, said, whatever, was really God saying it. It wasn't Jesus, it was God. It was God and Jesus. They were one. And what he seeks from us is to be one with them. Then you would never understand what I'm saying right now, because this is the gospel in a nutshell. And I'll tell you, it's the story of the adulterous woman. All right? So guys, listen to me now, okay? This is important, because they have maligned my God and my Jesus so badly, and I'd like to tell you a story that maybe you've heard before, maybe you haven't heard before. So Jesus is regarded as a rabbi. So he's hanging out in the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. In fact, Pastor Paul Begley has some film from that area. Some of those olive trees still remain today from when Jesus was there. So early in the morning, he came to the temple, and as a rabbi, and he had paid his temple tax, he can go into the temple, and all the people were coming to him. That's probably going to evoke some jealousy, to say the least. And he sat down and began to teach them, and the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, guys, listen to me. Whenever you see Jesus being cross or mean or seemingly very tough, it's always the scribes and the Pharisees. These scribes and the Pharisees were the people that were keeping the texts like Isaiah and the Psalms and those types of scriptures and the Torah and so forth. And then they were the experts in the letters and the scriptures themselves. And then the Pharisees as a religious sect of Judaism, okay? And they were the most legalistic, and they literally interpreted the Ten Commandments, which we talked about in the last episode I talked about. So anyway, here we are, Jewish law. Jesus is a rabbi. Here comes a woman caught in the very act of adultery. They actually caught her in the act of it, okay? Now, I'd like to know where the heck the man is here, but anyway, moving on. And having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, And you'll see this to this day in Islamic countries. They will stone women to death for adultery and those kinds of things. It's brutal. It's not acceptable in Steve Olson's world. Okay. Anyhow, now basically they said in the law of Moses it commanded us to stone such women. What then do you say? And really, what God was hoping that is that anybody in the right mind would never do that, and they would beg out for mercy. But stupid ass men. So anyway, they were saying this, testing him. Okay, yeah, he's a rabbi. He's an expert in the Old Testament, all those Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament scriptures, right? So they might have grounds to accuse him, because that is all the enemy of our souls. I don't care how you want to describe it, the dark forces. That's all they want to do is accuse, 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 accuse. Jesus called Satan the accuser of the brethren. So when people accuse me of all kinds of stuff, or accuse any of my friends or people that know him, it's just kind of comes with the territory. You know, when you're out, when you're coming from the perspective of light, no matter what religious faith you come from. I'm a Christian and explaining Christianity today, but yeah. So anyway, so what happens was they were testing him. All of these guys, they've got rocks. Picture this big, huge crowd of people. Rocks. All of them. Big rocks. Ready to kill somebody. Okay? Brutal. Ugly. And he stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground. Everybody speculates what he wrote, but let's continue. But when they persisted in asking him, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? He straightened up, because he's the rabbi on the scene, and said to them, he who is without sin among you, or mistakes, or error, or stains of the soul, or anything that misses the true mark of which is love in God, okay? Which is God in love with you and you in love with God. Anything that's outside of that, that is sin among you. Let him be the first to throw a stone at her. And then he just stepped back down and start writing on the ground, okay? I love this guy, man, the way he rolls. And then he says, and when they heard it, they began to go out one by one, the rocks dropping, clunk, 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 beginning with the older ones. You know, the more wise ones, the ones that have been around the block a couple times, the ones that maybe had a hit or two on their old record, if you know what I mean. And he was left alone, and alone with the woman. You know, she's sitting here, she's thinking she's going to die, and now she's sitting here with God. You with me? She's with God right now. And there she was in the center of the court. And then straightening up, Jesus said to her, woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you? And she said, no, Lord, no one, Lord. And Jesus says, I do not condemn you either. Go from now on and sin no more. That was God talking. First, he confounded these. I always want to swear when I think about the Pharisees. He always wants to come at the religious people, the finger pointers, the people that are trying to bring other people down, right? He hates that. But the woman that was the victim in this case of these brutal men, God stepped in, saved her life, and then let her go. And he was not condemning her. So what is your sin, man? What is your big hit that you did with God that made you unforgivable? What was the big problem? What was the big mistake you made that's unforgivable, that you should be stoned for? Jesus is saying to you right now, God is saying to you, Yeshua, Yahweh is saying to you through these words, through the time, okay? He's saying to you right now, where are your accusers? And there are none. And he's saying, neither does he condemn you. Go and sin no more. And I hope that brings you comfort and joy. And I am teaching the gospel in many parts, and you never know where I'm going to pop up with it. It might be a video, or it might be the end of the video.